How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Daled, Daf 4 of Masechta Horayos. Wow, Chavi, how's Masechta Horayos doing? It's tricky, right? Yesterday was a hard daf. Today's daf, is it hard? I don't know. The beginning of Horayos, it seems to I'm up to Daf Tes of Masechta Horayos. I'm recording Daf Daled, but I'm up to Daf Tes. I've been pretty I've been struggling to keep up. I'm still trying to catch my breath from all those Yain Nesach sugyas the other week. Oh, sheesh. Yeah. How am I supposed to get caught up? I'm trying, but it's not easy. Anyways, where are we? So what was I saying? Okay. So the first few dafs of Masechta Horayos are require our energy and our investment. Where I'm up to now, the whole daf is the whole Masechta is only 14 dafs. So I'm up to daf Tes. The last few dafs have been a little bit quicker in some ways. I don't even know. But anyways, the point I'm making today, we're gonna have to put our energy in today's daf again. It's a lot of details about Parlam Dover Shel Tzibur. So it talks about when an individual acts once post-court rescinding. I must have made a mistake in that phrase. When an individual acts post-court, it was very. It's difficult to describe the different sections of today's daf. It's like, we're going to talk about this topic. It's like just pulling hairs a little bit. But basically, it's talking about a situation where Bezdin ruled, let's say, a particular type of chelev is mutter. They then realized that they made a mistake. They rescinded, and then some yid, nonetheless, ate that chelev. He wasn't aware that they had rescinded. Okay, it sounds exciting, right? So that's the first part of today's daf. The nature of Sanhedrin's inadvertent ruling, part 1. The point being, as we're going to see in our Mishnah, what exactly were they talking about? What was the ruling about? If they say Shabbos is deleted, would you offer a Parlam Dover Shel Tzibur for that? They just what's the scope? What's the nature of the type of thing that they're ruling about? So that is the nature of Sanhedrin's inadvertent ruling, part 1. And then the requirements for a proper Sanhedrin for Parlam Dover Shel Tzibur. That is going to be a Mishnah that we're going to get to towards the end of the daf. And then finally, the daf closes with the nature of Sanhedrin's inadvertent ruling, part 2. Which is, what are some of the requirements for the nature of Parlam Dover Shel Tzibur? These things are just so technical. What do you want me to tell you? I'm not I don't know. It's just so technical that I don't even know what to even say or how to describe things. But so it's going to require us to get into it and to buckle up and to focus our minds on understanding Par Helim Dover Shel Tzibur. Friends, we are going to begin on Daf Gimel Amid Beis on the second of the wide lines at the Mishnah Horu Bezdin v'yadu sheto v'chazu ben. So Sanhedrin ruled, let's say, a particular type of chelev is mutter. Classic example. V'yadu sheto, and then they became aware that they made a mistake. V'chazu, so they rescinded, but not everybody got the memo. Whether they had already offered the Parlam Dover Shel Tzibur or not, and some Yidala went and ate chelev because he says, right, Bezdin ruled it's okay. So if Shimon says he's potter, he does not have to bring a korban chatas, okay, because he was acting based on Bezdin, kind of like we said in the previous Mishnah. Which I guess also indicates that, we had said that it's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda in the previous Mishnah that an individual is potter from bringing a korban chatas, but I'd imagine that Rabbi Shimon sounds like he would say that as well. Rabbi Lazar Omer Sofik. Rabbi Elazar says that it is a suffix that he brings a asham talui. Interesting. He brings an asham talui. Asham talui. This is another example that we're just going to use chaylev. Whenever it comes to korbanos, you just use chaylev. Most random halacha just comes up by korbanos. Anyways, so asham talui. So the classic example of asham talui is you ate fat. Okay, I guess that's what was for dinner, a plate of fat, and or maybe you went to a restaurant and that was your main, a plate of fat or something, whatever it is. You ate fat, and now you mom apparently maybe somebody says like, oh, that may have been chaylev. But you don't know. It's not like they said, oh, by the way, that was chaylev, and you're like, oh, dag nabbit, oops, and you have to bring in korban chatas. You find out that it might have been chaylev. You don't know. Maybe it was shuman, maybe it was chaylev. So what do you do in that case? You can't bring in korban chatas because you don't know that you actually ate chaylev. If you do nothing, but what if you do nothing, then what happens if you actually ate chaylev? So you bring an asham talum. You bring a asham that is brought for when there's a suffix of whether you're chayav a korban chatos. So you bring an asham talui. So Rabbi Elazar says in this case, you would bring an asham talui as well. Okay? That Bezdin had ruled that this particular chaylev is permitted. They realized they made a mistake. They rescinded. This person didn't get the memo, and he ate the chaylev. He brings in asham talui. Let's go weiter. Ezu suffix. Now, what's the scenario where there's an asham talui? Like, what's the scenario where there's a suffix that you'd be bringing an asham talui for? Yashiv lo beso chayv. Basically, if he's like me, and he's sitting at home all day learning, and Bezdin in the meantime had issued a ruling and had rescinded, but he's living in his own bubble. Goes out once a week when he runs out of coffee, and although Taka, I'm actually, what time is it? It's 5 p.m. I actually, in about 15-20 minutes, I have to go to my chavrusa. It's Sunday. It's my weekly chavrusa where we drink wine and learn Rav Ginsburg Chassidus. I don't know if we're going to drink wine today. I really shouldn't be drinking wine because I have a lot to do. So it happens to be I'm leaving my house. But anyways, so you have somebody who doesn't leave their house, and so Bezdin had rescinded their halacha. This guy didn't get the memo. So the suffix is like, was he really relying on Bezdin? Did he know? Should he have known? He ate the chaylev. Chaylev has a chiyuv karis / chatos. Right? Zdono karis shigasu chatos. So Rabbi Elazar says, okay, so in that case, when he's at home, he brings a korban asham ta'alui. However, if the reason why he was unaware of Bezdin's, Dennis, what is the noun for rescind? Rescission? Rescinding? Bezdin's rescinding? I don't know. But if he was traveling, and because he was mamish in Timbuktu, that's why he didn't get the memo. Well, then he's potter. He doesn't bring in asham talui. They're like, yeah, he had no way of knowing that Bezdin rescinded, and therefore he really was certain, he was objectively relying upon, he was definitely relying upon the ruling of Bezdin, and he would simply be potter. Okay, but where he's hunkering down at home, and that's why he didn't find out, so he would bring an asham talui. According to Rabbi Elazar, Amar Bekiva says, Bekiva muda'ani boze. Bekiva says, yeah, I'm on board with this ruling, shu karav liftur min achova, that somebody who is traveling to Timbuktu, and therefore he does not know about the recension, so he would not have to bring any korban. Amar lo ben Azeh says to Rabbi Akiva, my shno zeman yoshev bebeso. Why is somebody who's traveling any different than somebody who is sitting in his home? Shayoshev bebeso efshir haylo sheyishma. Somebody who's at home, he's not out of town, but he's in town. He's just at home. He could have somewhere or another found out. But somebody who's in Timbuktu, how in the world is he going to find out? Remember, this was before they had iPhones. How the heck was somebody in Timbuktu to know that the Sanhedrin rescinded their ruling? But somebody that was at home, there's more of a likelihood that he could have found out. Haru bezdin lakor es kol aguf. Okay, so this relates to that, right? The second topic of today's daf, the nature of Sanhedrin's inadvertent ruling, part 1. So this is that. Haru bezdin lakor es kol aguf. If bezdin ruled to uproot the whole shebang, for example, amru ein nida batorah. They said hilchos nida, deleted. Ein Shabbos b'Torah. Shabbos, deleted. Ein avodas zechon b'Torah. Avodah zara, deleted. Harei elu p'turin. Okay, there's not going to be a parallel davar shel tzibur for bezdin, for Sanhedrin, deleting a whole topic. A whole. I feel like mitzvah is kind of like not significant enough. Like Shabbos, the whole Masechta Shabbos, one of the longest Masechtas in Shas. There's like a million of sub halachos. There's 39 melachos, the avos melachos, tolados. He just deleted that whole world of Shabbos. Right? Sanhedrin just deletes Shabbos. Okay, that you're not going to bring a parallel davar shel tzibur for that. Horu levato miktzas v'lekayim miktzas. However, if what the ruling was concerning to nullify some of a mitzvah while keeping other parts of the mitzvah, harei elu chayavin. Well, then that's what we're talking about when it comes to parallel davar shel tzibur. Kate said, how so? Amru yesh nida b'Torah. If they say, yeah, of course, there's hilchos nida in the Torah. It's psukim in the Torah. I don't know what parsha is nida in. I don't remember. Aval abal shomeres yom kineged yom potter. But one who sleeps with a shomeres yom kineged yom is potter. What's a shomeres yom kineged yom? It's going to come up in the Gemara as well. So let's just explain it now. Who could tell me what shomeres yom kineged yom is? Oh, sheesh. Shomeres yom kineged yom. This is obviously going to come up plenty in Masechta Nida, which isn't even that far away anymore. Masechta Nida is what, maybe 2 years away or so? Basically, the way that Nida is practiced nowadays is not the Nida de Oraisa. Basically, nowadays, if a woman sees dam, so then she just waits 7 days. Dam, wait 7 days. But actually on a Deoraisa level, there's actually 2 different types of dam. There's dam nida and there's dam ziva. And basically, what happens is, let's say the first time a woman sees dam, let's say, so then she is or let's say if it's the first time in several weeks even, so then that would definitely be dam nida. So, midoraisa, what that means is that once a woman sees dam, so then for the next 7 days she's a nida. Even if she sees dam every single day over those 7 days, nida ends at the end of 7 days from the first time of seeing dam. And then I think she goes to the mikveh, I think on day 7, even she's a tefillas yom, I think until that night. And then basically that night, I think she's Torah. I think that's correct. So now, so that's the first 7 days. So she sees dam for 7 days. She's a nida, regardless of if she does or doesn't see dam within the course of the next 7 days, makes no difference. Now comes to day 8, kilu, after nida is over. Now for the next 11 days, from day 8 through day 18, these are yemei ziva. And what that means is that if within these following 11 days, days 8 through 18, she sees dam 3 days in a row, she becomes a zava. Okay? So let's say she now sees dam on day 8 and day 9 and day 10. Then she becomes a zava. And now, when she's a zava, she now has to wait. She continues to be a zava, which is an avatuma, until she has 7 days without seeing any dam. At the end of that, she brings a korban, and then she becomes tower, and then after that, the next time she sees dam, it will be nida again. So now what happens if she sees Dam on day 8? Okay. And now she's like, if I see Dam on day 9 and day 10, I'm going to be a Zava. So what happens is, so she saw Dam on day 8. So on day 9, she's what's called a Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom. She needs to be on the lookout on day 9 to see if she's going to see Dam on, that day again for a second consecutive day. And on a woman who is a Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom, so she's not allowed to, she can't have Bia on that day. So therefore, so that is all, okay. Now that that's explained, we don't need to explain it again on this stuff. But so that is to say that if the Chachamim ruled that, yes, of course, there's Hilchos Nida, but it's mutter for a Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom to have Bia. And then they realize, wait, we made a mistake. So that would be subject to Palam Davar Shel Tzibur. Right? So, okay, so Amr Nida, Yesh Nida Batar, of course, is Hilchos Nida. However, Aval Abal Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom Potter, but somebody who sleeps with the Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom is Potter. Yesh Shabbos Batar. Of course, there's Shabbos. Aval Amotzim Rishus HaYachal Rishus HaRabim Potter. But somebody who brings something out from Rishus HaYachal to Rishus HaRabim, that's okay. Yesh Avodas Kochavim Batar. Of course, there's Avodah Zarah in the Torah. Aval Mishtachave Potter. But somebody who bows down is Potter. Right? So the Gemara is going to say, for example, somebody, right, if they say, yeah, Markulis, you throw rocks at it. You don't bow down to it. If you bow down to Markulis, it's mutter. But that's a mistake. So in these scenarios, so in these scenarios, there would be a Parim Davar Shel Tzibur, right? Because they're not deleting an entire body of mitzvahs, but they're ruling that a particular detail of a mitzvah is permitted when really it's forbidden. Shenem v'nelem davar v'lo kol haguf. That a part, an aspect, a thing, an aspect of a mitzvah was hidden from them. They ruled incorrectly about. That is when there is a problem. Davar shel tzibur, not if they delete the entire mitzvah, like all of Hilchos Shabbos or something. So now says the Gemara, my time to Reb Shimon. How come Reb Shimon says potter? No, so what are we talking about? We're talking about Bezdin Paskin, let's say some kind of chelev was mutter or whatever. And then they realized, oops, it's not mutter. So they revoke it. Some Yidela didn't get the memo. And he ate the chelev. He says, well, Bezdin says it's okay. Reb Shimon says potter. How come? So, my time to Reb Shimon, how come Reb Shimon says potter ho'il u'rishus Bezdin closes? Since this Yid is eating the chelev with the rishus permission, based on the fact that Bezdin says it's mutter, that's why he's doing it. Because it's going based on Bezdin, therefore he's potter. Okay. What time is it? It's 8 o'clock at night. So I'm still not quite over this lost voice thingy. So at night it's a little more difficult. So sorry if I'm coughing a bit, but I should be okay. Those who say Amar Yud Amar Rab, Amar Reb Shimon, Kol Hara Sheyotza Biro Tzibur, that any ruling that has spread to the majority of the people, Yachid so an individual who acts based on this ruling, right? It's a ruling that has spread to the people. It's known now far and wide. An individual who acts based on this ruling, because it's a very interesting concept. Because the point of a ruling, very interesting. The point of a ruling is basically to say that, if you rely upon us. That's why you have a posek. What's the point? You ask a shayla to posek. A posek tells you what to do. So you're relying based on the posek. I don't know what to do. What do? I go to a posek. The posek tells me what to do. You rely on the broad shoulders or whatever of the posek, and therefore, so it's a very interesting concept. It says, the whole point of poseks and rulings are lahavchim and choking to mezid. Lebezid is to make a distinction between inadvertent and advertent. If you're doing the whole point is if you're doing based on the psak of the Sanhedrin, you're good. You're not going to have to bring a korban chatas. Meisvei, we have a contradiction. Paralim davar shel tzibur. When it comes to paralim shel davar shel tzibur, v'siri avodas kochavim, and avodas kochavim, goats. Batchila govin alayim divrei Reb Shimon. Interesting, right? So this is talking about public avodas kochavim, goats, I believe. What is Rashi? Yeah, I believe these are public. If Bezdin rules that, like, let's say, as I think we had an example in the Mishnah, right, that it's permitted to bow down to a Markulis, let's say. So then you would offer a Sirei Avodas Kochavim. So when it comes to Pailim Davar Shel Tzibur, Sirei Avodas Kochavim, these are communal offerings that are offered when Bezdin makes a mistaken ruling. They accidentally, right, they mistakenly ruled that a particular type of chelev is permitted, or that bowing down to Markulis is permitted, for example. So, Batchila gov le'endiv Reb Shimon. So, Reb Shimon says that this is a new collection. Reb Yehuda omer michuma salishkein bain, whereas Reb Yehuda says they come for the chuma salishka. New. What's the machlok between Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda? So, of course, we learned Masechta Shkolin many years ago. Very, very difficult Masechta. Very, very difficult Masechta. I probably don't remember too much from it. Very hard Masechta. Anyway, so, of course, the Masechta Shkolin is about the Truma Salishka, that every year there would be a collection. In other time, they would collect the Machzis HaShekel, and that would be, they would have a fund, essentially, to fund public offerings. So the Talmud Shashach, Talmud Shabbat Arbaim, for example, they would be paid for by these funds, by the Truma Salishka. So now the shaila is, when it comes to Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur, who's paying for this? Who pays for the Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur? Can anybody guess? It's Machlokes. Reb Shimon says it's not paid for. It is not paid for by the Truma Salishka. It's a new collection, which means that they're going around to all of Klal Yisrael and they're saying, okay, we need to bring a Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur. Can you contribute efforts to the Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur? Same thing for the Siri Rosh Chodesh. Whereas Rav Yehuda disagrees and he says, no, take the money from the Truma Salishka. It's a public offering. Use the money from the Truma Salishka. So again, Meisvei, Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur, v'Siri Avodas Kochavim, Batchila govin alein divrei Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says it's a new collection. It's a new fund. They go around, they say, they ask the people, we need to offer a Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur, can you contribute epis? Rabbi Yehuda omer mitruma salishka imbain. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says it comes from the Truma Salishka, from the same fund that is that funds communal offerings. Amai. Now, if that's the case, that according to Reb Shimon, the Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur is paid for by a new fund that's collected, well then how can Reb Shimon be saying that this individual who ate chelev, after Bezdin rescinded their mistaken psak, right, Bezdin said a certain type of chelev, let's say, is permitted. They then realized, oops, we made a mistake. They revoked the heter, they revoked the ruling. This guy didn't get the memo. He ate chelev, right? The chelev that they had ruled about, he ate it because he thought Bezdin said it was mutter. Reb Shimon says it's potter. He doesn't have to bring a korban chatas. He was going based on the Bezdin. The thing is, Reb Shimon also says that when Bezdin realizes that they make a mistake and they say, okay, well, we're gonna have to bring a Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur. Who's gonna pay for it? It's a new fund. They go around house to house to say, hey, we need to bring a Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur. Can you contribute epis? So this guy would have found out about it. No? Have you heard the Shaila? When Bezdin rescinded their ruling, they would have knocked on this guy's door, right? We said he's home all day and he's not getting out much. But they would have knocked on, honestly, this taka one of the Gemara's answer. It's an obvious answer, Cheveh. You've been listening to Babylon Talmud long enough. People who stay home all the time, what happens when people knock on their door? Obviously, you ignore it. Well, that's one answer. You're literally asking about some guy who's living who's got his head in the sand, and he didn't find out that Bezdin revoked their psak. And you're saying, well, wouldn't they have knocked on his door? Obviously, he would have ignored it. Akopanim, and this is the Gemara Shaila. The Gemara Shaila is, I don't understand how this guy could feign ignorance. Didn't he contribute to the Pilam Davar Shel Tzibur? So Amai, how come he's potter? Kevin the Gabilu, since they would have collected from him to pay for the Pilam Davar Shel Tzibur, Havle Hoda, he would have known about it. So how could he say that he didn't know and that he's potter from a Korban Chatas? One option is that they didn't say what they're collecting for. They knocked on the door. They said, hey, we're here from the Beis Hamikdash. We need to raise money. Can you contribute that piece? He said, sure. He didn't know that it was for Palam Davar Shel Tzibur, so he didn't know about the rescindance. Alternatively, he was out of town. So he knocked on his door and there was no answer. He was out of town. So they don't offer my answer, which is like he ignored them. That seems to be the obvious answer. I feel like they didn't consult with the hermit. Alternatively, Rab Gidach Tana Sover, that Rav actually holds like the other Tana who actually learns that it's the opposite. The Tani Ipcha, who learns Fakert, Patrila Govin Led, Div Rab Yehuda. Rab Shimon Omer Mechuma Salishkein Bay. That it's Rab Yehuda's opinion. It's Rab Yehuda's opinion that this was new money and that they would knock on everybody's door. But Rab Shimon says no, they wouldn't knock on everybody's door. They would use the Truma Salishka, so they weren't going around door to door, and therefore he didn't have this avenue to know about the revocation, and therefore he didn't know, and therefore he's part of bringing a korban chatas. Tani Reb Meir Mechayev Reb Shimon Poter. Okay, so now we learn in a brisa about the same scenario that there's the rule revoked. The guy ended up eating the chaleb. Tani Reb Meir Mechayev. So Reb Meir's opinion, Taka, this was not in our Mishnah. Reb Meir Taka says that this guy who ate the chaleb after Bezdin revoked the ruling is chayiv. He has to bring a korban chatas. Reb Shimon Poter. Reb Shimon, as you saw in the Mishnah, says Poter. Reb Elazar Omer Safik. Beloved says, Reb Elazar says he has to bring an Ashram Talud. As we saw in our Mishnah. Mishum Sumchis Amru Talui. Interesting. Now, in the name of Sumchis, they said Talui. Let's go weiter. Reb Yochanan says, Reb Yochanan, Ashram Talui Ike Benayu. That the nafkamina is in Ashram Talui. Wow. The difference between them is in Ashram Talui. Shish. Okay, so Reb Elazar had said that he brings in Asham Talui. You have this guy who. Okay, so you have this guy. Well, okay, Bezdin ruled that a certain type of chalev is permitted. They then realized they made a mistake. They revoked it. This guy didn't get the memo, right? As Reb Elazar says in the Mishnah, he was home and he didn't hear about the revocation, and therefore he ate this chalev that he was not supposed to eat. Rabbi Elazar says in that case he brings an Asham Talui, as opposed to if he's like traveling and he's in Timbuktu and he had zero way of knowing about the revocation. So in that case, Rabbi Elazar says he wouldn't bring an Asham Talui. But if he's at home, so then he brings an Asham Talui because, right, and Rabbi Akiva had mentioned in the Mishnah in response to Ben Azai, because he could have found out. What did Rabbi Akiva say? Okay, there was a possibility that he could have found out that Vezin revoked their psak, and maybe he did. No, and maybe he wasn't relying based on Vezin, maybe he was relying upon himself. Therefore, he maybe is chayiv a korban chatos, and therefore brings in Ashram Talui because he's not sure. So now, it's interesting. It's interesting. Rabbi Elazar says that he brings in Ashram Talui. Right, what does Rabbi Elazar say? Safek. And the Safek means he brings an Ashram Talud. Sumchus says Talud. So what's the difference between Rabbi Elazar who says Safek and Sumchus who says Talud? So according to Rabbi Elazar, he brings an Ashram Talud. According to Sumchus, he doesn't bring an Ashram Talud. Sheesh. Why not? Wow. Okay. Sheesh. Okay. Why not? So we kind of explained Rabbi Elazar already. let's even take a step back. Wow, this is a little bit subtle, but I think we mentioned, I was out for a few, I had to record this in 2 sittings. I think we mentioned in the Mishnah that an Asham Talui is usually brought for something that when there's a suffix about if you're chayiv to bring a korban chatas or not. There's a suffix about if you're chayiv to bring a korban chatas or not. So for example, a person is not sure if he ate chalev. He ate a piece of fat. We don't know if it was chalev or not. If it was chalev, then he has to bring a korban chatas. It was an accident. If it wasn't chalev, he doesn't have to do anything. But we don't know if he ate chalev or not. So he brings an ashram talu. So here as well, this guy is at home. Beis Din had revoked their ruling. If he had known that they revoked the ruling and he ate it anyways by accident, so then he's not acting. He wasn't acting based on their ruling. So then he would have to bring a korban chatas. But if he mamish didn't know that they had revoked the ruling and he was relying based on the ruling, he wouldn't have to bring a korban chatas. And since he's at home and maybe he could have found out, so we kind of like, right? So Rabbi Elazar says in that case he brings an ashram talui because we can't say wholeheartedly that he didn't know about the revocation and that wholeheartedly he was relying upon the Beis Din because he was at home. He could have, he wasn't in town. He could have found out about it. So therefore, because it's a suffix about was he relying upon Beis Din, in which case he's potter, or not, maybe it was acting based on his kind of own evaluation, wasn't relying totally on Beis Din saying it's mutter, in which case he would have to bring korban chatas. So it's a suffix, does he bring a korban chatas, doesn't he bring a korban chatas? We don't know, so he brings an ashram talu. Sumchus, however, reads it differently. He says, look, Sumchus says, when do you bring an ashram tali? You bring an ashram tali when you're talking about chalev. Kilu, did I eat chalev? Didn't I eat chalev? Did I do an aveira for which I be chayav a korban chatas or didn't? If I ate the chalev by accident, so then I have to bring a korban chatas. I ate chalev by accident. If I didn't eat the chalev by accident, if I didn't eat chalev, so I don't have to do anything. But I pasha don't know. Did I eat chalev? Didn't I eat chalev? I don't know what this bat was. So therefore he brings an ashram tali. If you don't know if you didn't have veira that carries a chiyuv chatas. I think in this case, the suffix isn't about whether he ate the chalev. He ate the chalev. The suffix is about what was his intention. Was he relying solely on Beis Din, in which case he wouldn't be chayav to bring a korban chatas? If he was relying solely on Beis Din, if he wasn't relying solely on Beis Din, then he would have to bring a korban chatas. But this isn't about did he do the avera or not. It's about what was his mindset. Was his mindset that of relying on Beis Din fully or not? For a mindset, says Sumchis, you're not going to bring a korban ashram tali. An ashram tali is when you're not sure if you did an avera that is a chiyuv chatas. Did you eat chalev? Didn't you eat chalev? That's not the case over here. He ate the chalev. The question is, what was his intention? For intention, you're not going to bring an ashram talui. So both Rabbi Elazar and Sumchis are saying that it's talui, right? Rabbi Elazar says suffix, Sumchis says talui. It means we're not sure what was the intention. Was he relying fully on Beis Din or not? But whereas Rabbi Elazar says, therefore he'll bring an ashram talui, Sumchis says there's no ashram talui. Reb Zera says, Reb Zera, Mashal Rabbi Elazar l'ma'adav says Reb Zera, let me give you a mashal, a parable for Rabbi Elazar who says to bring an ashram talui. L'adam she'achol safek chalev, safek shuman. Okay, to a person who ate a plate full of fat, and he doesn't know. Was it, well, he ate something that we're unsure if it was chaleb or shuman, v'nodalo, and he was made known. He was made known that the plate of fat that he ate may have been shuman, it may have been chaleb, we don't know. He ate a plate that was safek chaleb, safek shuman. Nobody knows what it was. He now became aware that he ate this mystery chalev, this mystery fat. He pasha doesn't know, am I chayav b'korban chatas or not? Shemaybe ashram talui. Now he brings a korban ashram talui, and we'll say in this case as well, since we're not sure what his intention was, what is he chayav b'korban chatas or not? So therefore, he brings an ashram. And certainly, according to the opinion who says that it's the congregation who brings the korban Ashram Tali. This is going to be on tomorrow's daf. Reb Meir says, right, this is going to be on tomorrow's daf. Reb Meir's opinion is that it's the Bezdin that brings the Parlam Davar Shel Tzibur. I don't know if I just said Ashram Tali, I don't know. But when it comes to, the question is, I think maybe I mentioned it, it's a big machlokes. Who actually offers the Parlam Davar Shel Tzibur? According to Reb Meir, it's the Bezdin. Bezdin made a mistake, they ruled incorrectly, they realized that their mistake, so that they bring the Parlam Davar Shel Tzibur. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon say that it's the congregation that brings the Parlam Davar Shel Tzibur. Rabbi Yehuda says every single tribe brings one. Rabbi Shimon says every tribe plus the Bezdin actually. But so it's a machlokes about who actually offers the Parlam Davar Shel Tzibur. So now we're saying V'lo boya the man omer tzibur ma'isi. Certainly, according to the opinion that it's the people, the congregation, that offers the Parlam Davar Shel Tzibur, and certainly there's more of a tzad there to say that he was aware of the revocation, and there's more of an argument to say that he would be chayiv a korban chatas, and that in this case he would be chayiv in Ashram Talui, right? That he would bring a korban. The mefarsum amilsa, that when it's the tzibur, when it's the congregation who is bringing the korban, so then it's more well known, in which case there's more of a tzad to say that it should be chayiv a korban. But even according to the man da'amar, who says that it's Bezdin who offers the Parlam Davar Shel Tzibur, so that therefore it's less well known. But nonetheless, if he would have inquired, he would have found out about the revocation, and therefore, still, we would say, bring in Ashram Tali. Rabbi Yossi, Bar Ovin, Vitem Rabbi Yossi, Bar Zvira, Mashal de Sumchis, Ma Adavar Domis, says Rabbi Yossi, Bar Ovin, Vitem Rabbi Yossi, Bar Zvira, that Sumchis, what is his? Right, Sumchis, who says that it's Talui, but there's no Ash, he's not going to offer a korban, there's no Ashram Talui. What is it similar to? Like a person who offers a korban, let's say korban chatos, bein hashmoshes, after shkia, before it says, now he offers the korban bein hashmoshes. We don't know if it's considered that the korban was offered, it's bein hashmoshes, safek yom safek laila. Was it offered during the day? Was it offered during night? Bein hashmoshes is geher, fine. We don't know. It's very quick, so we don't know. During bein hashmoshes, he offered at bein hashmoshes time. We don't know. Was it technically during the day that it was offered? During the night? Who knows? Like, it was during this period of uncertainty. Safek yom, safek laila. We don't know if it's day or night. And now we offer this korban. Was it offered during the day? Was it offered during the night? Who knows? She'ain maybe Ashram Tali. He doesn't bring in Ashram Tali there. Because again, it's not a suffix about did he do an Aveira or not. It's a suffix about was the kapara, did it work or not? V'lo mibaya lamanda. She'ain maybe Ashram Tali. He doesn't bring in Ashram Tali there. V'lo mibaya lamanda Omer Bezdin Mivin V'lo Farsim Amilsa. And certainly according to the opinion who says that it's Bezdin who offers the Parlam Davar Shel Tzibur. Therefore there's less of a reason to assume that he would have known about the revocation. But even according to opinion, who says that it's the congregation who offers the Parlam Davar Shel Tzibur, and there's more of a likelihood that he would have known about the revocation. Nonetheless, where am I? They would have told him. And therefore there's more of a tzad to say that he should have known. Still, he doesn't bring a Ashram Tali according to Sumchis. Because it's similar to this korban that was offered during Bein Hashmoshes, which is Safek Yom, Safek Laila, and you ask somebody, was it day, was it night? They're going to say, we don't know. So it's more similar to that, and there's no Ashram Tali. So here, Also, when we don't know, was his intention that he was relying upon Bezdin? Was he not relying upon Bezdin? Is he chayv to bring a korban chatas? Isn't he chayv to bring a korban chatas? We don't know. There's not going to be an Ashram Talui here, according to Sumchis. Amle ben Azai, Maishna Menayoshe B'chulei. So in the Mishnah, Ben Azai had asked Rabbi Akiva, what's the difference between somebody who's sitting in his house with his head in the sand, who doesn't know, who's unaware of Bezdin's revocation, versus somebody who's traveling and doesn't know of Bezdin's revocation? Shapir Kamarle Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva says, well, somebody who's traveling, there's no way for him to know. Somebody who's home and just his head is in the sand, there is a way for him to know, right? You could have asked people or whatever. But somebody who's traveling, there's really no way for him to know. Therefore, while Rabbi Elazar says that the person at home with his head in the sand would be chayv to be in korban ashram talui, the person traveling is patur. Shaper Kamalei Rabbi Akiva, the Ben Azai. Rabbi Akiva has a good response to Ben Azai, that when he's traveling, there's really no way to find out. Versus somebody who's at home who could technically find out. On my Rove, it says Rove, hechzik baderek ika benai. It's interesting because it's funny, I didn't really view the Mishnah as being like a machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Ben Azai as such. But anyways, we said that the difference between Ben Azai and Rabbi Akiva is when he's still home, but he's like packing up to go. He's on his way out the door, and he's, what's the word I'm thinking of? He's focused on other pre-oriented. I feel like it's not pre-oriented, but it's not pre-oriented. He's well, it's a word that starts with pre. He's pre-something with other things. You can be now Leben Azai Chayiv, the Beisa Isa, the Akiva Potter, the Echzik Bader. That if you have somebody, I don't know what's the word, I don't know, something. But anyways, if you have a person who's still home, but he's packing up, he's getting out the door, so in that case, Rabbi Akiva also, just like Rabbi Akiva says that there's kind of no way for him to know, so because he's traveling, he's away. So you're also, even once he's packing up and everything like that, and he's something with getting everything in order and getting out the door. So there was no way for him to have found out. Whereas Ben Azai would say, well, he's still home, so we'll treat him as such. We'll treat him as somebody who's home, and that they have ways to find out and would be chayv to bring a korban ashram tali. And now we arrive at the next section of today's daf, the nature of Sanhedrin's inadvertent ruling, part 1. Here we go. Hodu lo bezdin lakor, horu lo bezdin lakor es kol aguf. If bezdin ruled to just delete an entire, I feel like I'm searching for a lot of words. That could be whatever. If Bezdin rules to delete like an entire topic of the Torah, so then you would not bring a parlam davar shel tzibur for that. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, v'nelam davar v'lo she'akar hamitzvah kula. That something, a detail, an element was hidden, but not that the entire mitzvah should be uprooted, right? An element of Shabbos, not deleting Shabbos. Ketzad, how so? Amru ein nida batera. If they say hilchos nida, deleted. Ein Shabbos b'Torah, Shabbos, deleted. Ein avodas kochavim b'Torah, avodah zara, deleted. Yachol Yehu Chayovin. Is it possible that they say oops and now they have to bring a parlam davar shel tzibur? Tamalom v'nelam davar v'lo shetisalim mitzvah kula. That an element, an aspect is hidden, but not that the whole mitzvah is gone. Hare elu pturin. So in these cases, there would be no par helem davar shel tzibur. Avol, amru yesh nida b'Torah. But if they say, of course there's hilchos nida, it's in the Torah. Avol, habal shomer yom kineged yom potter. But as we explained in the Mishnah, about shomer yom kineged yom, that somebody who has bia with, if a man has bia with a woman who's shomer yom kineged yom potter, that would be a scenario of Pailam Davar Shel Tzibur. Yesh Shabbos b'Torah, aval amotzim reshus hayachal reshus harabim potter. But, or if they say, yeah, of course there's Shabbos, yeah, we're just giving a psak regarding the halacha of otzam reshus l'reshus, that somebody who's motzim reshus hayachal reshus harabim potter. Yesh avodas kocham b'Torah. Of course there's avodas zara in the Torah. It's a big problem. It's a big isser. Aval mishtachave potter. But somebody who bows down, which we're going to explain that as meaning somebody who bows down to Markulis. Right? So Markulis, normally you throw stones. They say, since Markulis is something you throw stones at, if you bow down, you're potter. Yochel yu p'turin? Is it possible that in that case, they would be exempt from a Pailam Davar Shel Tzibur? Tamalomer v'ne'elam davar v'lo kol guf. V'lo kol aguf. Therefore, the pasuk says that an element was hidden, but not the entire topic, right? So an element of Avodah Zarah was ruled mistakenly about. An element of Shabbos, an element of Nida. That is where we're talking about Pailam Davar Shel Tzibur. Amar, we said, Yachol yu p'turin. Interesting. So the Gemara asks a funny question. Like we just asked, right? What do we say? This was literally 2 lines earlier. Yachol yu p'turin? It's a funny question. Here we're saying, meaning we said, if they say Shabbos deleted, just delete all of Shabbos and all of the halachas, so just delete Shabbos. So we say in that case, there's no Pailam Davar Shel Tzibur. Okay. Now in the case where they say that there is Shabbos, just Otam Reshus L'Reshus is mutter, so the Gemara says something funny there. Is it possible that there'll be potter there? So the Gemara says, I don't understand. Is that a serious question? We already said that there's no Pailam Davar Shel Tzibur when you delete all of Hilchos Shabbos, all of Shabbos. We're now saying, okay, but if they say there is Shabbos, just not Hotzam Reshus L'Reshus, are you seriously asking, is it possible they're going to be potter there? And what if the answer is yes? Yeah, they're potter there too. There's no Korban Pailam Davar Shel Tzibur there. Well, then where is there a Pailam Davar Shel Tzibur? Like, if there's no Pailam Davar Shel Tzibur when they delete all of Shabbos, and there's no Pailam Davar Shel Tzibur when they delete one halacha of Shabbos, so where is there Pailam Davar Shel Tzibur? Like, is that a serious question? So again, Amar Mai. We said a line ago, Yachol yu p'turin, is it possible that if they say that Otzam Reshus L'Reshus is mutter, they would be potter from bringing, there would be no Pailam Davar Shel Tzibur? I don't understand. Be'ivikiu miktas uvito miktas p'turin. If that's really a possibility, that in this case of Kiyu miktas and Bitul miktas, where they're saying, yeah, there is Hilchos Shabbos, just not this particular halacha. If in that case there's no Pailam Davar Shel Tzibur, Uvakirus Kol Aguf P'turin, and also when they say all of Shabbos is deleted, there's no Pailam Davar Shel Tzibur, B'mai Chayav, and then where is there a Pailam Davar Shel Tzibur? So Tana Achika Kashale. This is what the Tana was asking. Ema, I'll say, Davar Kula Milsa Mashma. The Tana was saying, well, I'll suggest that actually when it says V'ne'elam davar me'eni hakol, maybe davar means a whole davar, not a partial davar. Maybe actually when it says V'ne'elam davar, it actually means delete all of Shabbos. Tamalomar V'ne'elam davar. So we say, therefore it says V'ne'elam davar, that we're specifically talking about, just Hotzah, not all of Shabbos, right? Shomer Yom, but not all of Nida. For example, my mashma, how does V'ne'elam davar teach only part of it? We just suggested that davar should mean all of it. So why does V'ne'elam davar mean part of it? Amar Ula says, Ula karibe v'nelam mi davar. So Ula says something interesting, which is that the mem from v'nelam can also be applied to davar, that is like v'nelam mi davar, part of the matter. So not all of Shabbos, but part of it. Hotzamer is just for example. Chizkiya says, Amar Kol, the pasuk says, v'osu achas mikol mitzvahs. Says Chizkiya that the pasuk, it says in that same pasuk by Parlam Davar Shel Tzibur, v'osu achas mikol mitzvahs. Mikol mitzvahs v'lo kol mitzvahs. Right? That on Shabbos, there's 1,000,000 Hilchos Shabbos. Right? 39 Melachos, the Avos, Tolados. There's 1,000,000 halachos when it comes to Hilchos Shabbos. So we're saying mikol mitzvahs, v'lo kol mitzvahs. We're not saying delete all of the mitzvahs of, right, the entirety of Hilchos Shabbos, the entirety of Shabbos. But no, we're not saying delete all of the mitzvahs. Rather, mikol mitzvahs, a subset, i.e., Hotzam Rishus is mutter. That's where there will be a Palam Davar Shel Tzibur. Mitzvahs ta'ati mashma, but the Gemara suggests, wait, but mitzvahs is plural, but the plurality of mitzvahs would make me think that we're talking about multiple mitzvahs. Kilu, Shabbos, Nida, Avodah Zarah. And when it says mikol mitzvahs, it's saying they're not saying all three of them or all of the mitzvahs in the Torah are permitted. Rather, just Shabbos. Just delete Shabbos. Keep Nida, keep Avodah Zarah. Delete Shabbos. Maybe that's what it means. Maybe it is talking about all of Hilchos Shabbos. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok mitzvahs ksiv. It says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok that even though we read the word mitzvos, there's no, right, it's written mitzvahs, singular. It's written singular. And therefore, it's talking about one particular topic, for example, Shabbos, or Nida, or Avodah Zarah. And then Mikol mitzvos, so among all of the halachos of Shabbos, Nida, Avodah Zarah, so let's say within all of the mitzvahs of Shabbos, for example, if they rule that Otzah, Rishus is mutter, so then there will be a Palam Davar Shel Tzibur. Rav Ashi says, Rav Ashi, Yolev Davar Mizakin Mamre. Rav Ashi says that we learn out a Gezeira Shava. It says Davar here by Palam Davar Shel Tzibur, and it also says Davar by Zakin Mamre. Dichsiv Bei, Zakin Mamre, it says by Zakin Mamre, Ki Yipole Mimcha Davar, Losaser Min, Ki Yipole Mimcha Davar, Losaser Min, don't stray from the davar right or left. Mamre min hadavar lo kol davar. Just like by Zaken Mamre it says min hadavar, not the entire matter but part of it. So hapara davar lo kol aguf. So also by Palam Davar Shel Tzibur we're talking about an element but not the whole thing, right? An element of Hilchos Shabbos, for example, but not deleting all of Shabbos. Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Ein bezin chayaven ad sheyor b'davar she'ein atzidukin modim bo. Whoa. Avol b'davar she'atzidukin modim bo, p'turin. My time is kri beiravu. Wow. What's the davar she'ein atzidukin modim bo? Well, the tzidukin, they would only follow things that are written in the Torah. The Torah she'bechsav. Torah she'bal peh, not interested. So says Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel that the Sanhedrin, that there would only be a Palam Davar Shel Tzibur if the Sanhedrin Paskin ruled regarding a topic Torah Shebal Peh. If it's written explicitly in the Torah, then there's no Palam Davar Shel Tzibur. Right? We'll just say, look, just literally, if it's like a pasuk in the Torah, just look at the Torah. But if they rule about something that's Torah Shebal Peh, that is not recorded anywhere, is not written down anywhere. Of course, for many thousands, well, not for thousands of years, of course, for thousands of years, Torah Shebal Peh was oral. That's how it's meant to be. So if the ruling was regarding Torah Shebal Peh, that is where there would be a Palam Davar Shel Tzibur. So let's read that again. Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Ein bezin chayaven ad sheyoru b'davar she'ein that there's only a Palam Davar Shel Tzibur with regard to Torah Shebal Peh, with regard to something that the Tzdukim would not agree with, would not recognize, i.e., Torah Shabbat Peh. Something that Stukim would agree with, would recognize, Torah Shabbat Pturin. So then there is no Parlam Davar Shel Tzibor in that case. My time comes Zil Kribera, who, because it's a topic that we say like, hey, you should have just looked it up. It's right there, black on white. So that is not a place where there would be a Parlam Davar Shel Tzibor. So now we learn in our Mishnah, Yesh Nida Batero Aval Abal Shmeres Yom Kineged Yom Potter. We said in our Mishnah that if the ruling was that yes, there is Nida is a thing. However, regarding Shmeres Yom Kineged Yom, so if a man has bia with a Shmeres Yom Kineged Yom, if they ruled Potter there, so then there would be a Parlam Davar Shel Tzibor. The thing is, ve'amai, based on what we just said, that Parlam Davar Shel Tzibor does not apply to Torah Shebichsav. Shomer's Yom Kineged Yom, Hoksiv B'Safrala. Shomer's Yom Kineged Yom is not a Dirabon, thing's a Doraisa thing. Right, B'Safrala. Right, that a woman counts during the Yemei Ziva. That she shomeres Yom Kineged Yom. So if we're saying that Parlam Davar Shel Tzibor applies only by Torah Shabbat Peh, if we're saying Parlam Davar Shel Tzibor only applies to Torah Shabbat Peh, so then why is the example that we're giving regarding shomeres Yom Kineged Yom? That's Torah Shabbat Chsav. That's Midoras. The Amri Ha'aroya Sharia Gmar Biyahu De Asira Givaldik. Well, what the ruling was that with regard to Shomeres Yom Kineged Yom, having bia with the Shomeres Yom Kineged Yom, what they had ruled is not that it's permitted, because that's in the Torah, right? But they ruled of something more specific. They had ruled that what's usher in the Torah by Shomeres Yom Kineged Yom is full bi'ah, but ha'ara, they said is permitted. What's ha'ara? It's come up several times. So full bi'ah would be full penetration. So machlok is what ha'ara is. Ha'ara could either be neshikas aver, which means touching the penis to the vagina without any penetration at all. Alternatively, it could be achnasa satara, slight penetration. That's what ha'ara is. And via would be full penetration. So they ruled with regard to Shomeres Yom Kineged Yom, not that it's mutter to have bia with Shomeres Yom Kineged Yom, because that the Torah says it's not allowed. But what they ruled is, we know that that's not allowed, but what is allowed is ha'ara. That's what they said is allowed. But hanami ksiv, but that's also written. Es mikora ha'ara. Also talks about ha'ara. So that's also dorais. It's also Torah Shebichsav. De'amri kedarka asira. Shlo kedarka shaya. Okay, so you know what they ruled? They said that by a Shomeres Yom Kineged Yom, what's also is kedarka, but shelo kedarka, anal, that would be permitted. That would be, so they ruled that shelo kedarka is permitted. Hoksiv mishkevei isha. But that's also in the Torah, right? The Torah talks about mishkevei isha, plural. Kedarka and shelo kedarka. Da'ami kedarka also afilu ha'aroya. B'shelo kedarka g'marbia would also aval ha'aroya shayir. Okay. So what the Sanhedrin ruled with regard to so they said there is nida, and there is Shomeres Yom Kineged Yom, and there's lots of halachas of Shomeres Yom Kineged Yom. Within Shomeres Yom Kineged Yom, ha'ara b'shelo kedarka is mutter. That's what they ruled. If that's the case, I feel the need nami. Okay, but then why are we saying that the ruling about Shomeres Yom Kineged Yom? I mean, we could just say that, like, they say, yes, there's sochos nida, but by a nida, ha'ara shelo kedarka is permitted. Why do we have to say it's talking about, if it's a very specific thing? Like, could you say it about nida? Why does it have to be about Shomeres Yom Kineged Yom? So ela le'olam kidarka. Okay, so we're not talking about shelo kidarka. We're talking about kidarka. V'de'amrei ha'aroya. V'amrei, what they said is v'de'amrei, that they said ha'aroya be'isha davahu tichsiva. So it's talking about shomeres yom kineged yom, and what they paskined is that ha'aroa by shomeres yom kineged yom is mutter, like we said earlier. As they had paskin that by shomeres yom kineged yom, what's not allowed is full bia by shomeres yom kineged yom. Ha'aroa is mutter. But what about the pasuk? It's mikore ha'aroa. They said, that pasuk, that's talking about a nida. We're talking about shomeres yom kineged yom. We're saying ha'aroa is permitted by shomeres yom kineged yom. That is what they had said. And then they made a mistake, and there's a pile in davar shel tzibur. V'baisem, alternatively, the amrei zav lahavyo ela bi yimame. Okay, alternatively, they were saying regarding a shomeres yom kineged yom who's checking to see, right, as I explained earlier in the Mishnah, nidas for the first 7 days, and then the next 11 days are yemei ziva. So they paskin, they can only become a zava, right, that the dam seen on days 8 through 18 can only lead to a woman becoming a zava if the dam is seen during the day, not if it's seen at night. Dechsiv kol yemei zava, all the days of her being a zav, and then they realize that's actually not true. Even if she sees dam at night, that was the halacha that they had permitted by shomeres yom kineged yom, that they would bring a parliament of a shel tzibur for Tanan. We learned in our Mishnah, Yeh Shabbos b'Torah, aval hamotzeh mereshus l'reshus poter. We said in the Mishnah that if they rule, there is Shabbos, of course, but hamotzeh mereshus l'reshus, that particular halacha is mutter. So they would bring a parliament of a shel tzibur. Ve'amai, but if we're saying that there's no parliament of a shel tzibur by Torah shebichsav, hotzah Oksiva. But the pasuk talks about Otza. It's a pasuk in Yirmiyah. Lo sotziu masami batechem. That on Shabbos, do not bring out carrying stuffing from your houses on Shabbos. That's Otza. Dame Otza uda aser achnasa muter. Well, they said that Otza is aser, but achnasa is muter. That's what they ruled about. Alternatively, the Amri Otza uda asira moshed v'zoik shari. Alternatively, they said walking out of your home with something is also, but sticking your hand out the window and dropping it into Rishus Harabim or throwing it into Rishus Harabim is permitted. That was a mistake that they made. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, Yesh avodas kuchavim b'Torah, aval mishtach ve'poter. There is avodah zarah in the Torah. Just if you bow down, it's permitted. V'amayim mishtach ve'oksiva tichsiv lo sishtach b'le'el acher. It's Torah shebichsav. It says, do not bow down to avodah zarah. Da'amri ki asiru shtachavaya kedarka. Well, they said that what is not allowed is when it is, that's how you worship that avodah zarah. Aval shelo kedarka sharia. Right? Meaning, if there's an avodah zarah, then how do you worship that avodah zarah? You bow down to it. Okay, so of course in that case, you're not allowed to bow down to the avodah zarah. But they ruled is that what about something like markulis, where you worship it by throwing stones at it? And then they said that if you bow down to markulis, potter. So in that case, they would bring a parliament of shel tzibur. By same alternatively, they said that they ruled that when it comes to bowing down to avodah zarah, if they ruled that bowing down to avodah zarah means pishut yadayim b'raglayin, right, going on, mamish, lying down entirely on the floor with your hands and legs spread out. If they ruled that bowing down without pishut yadayim b'raglaim, just, bowing down to avodah zarah, just not to that extent, would be permitted. So for that, there would be a parlim davar shel tzibur. Rav Yosef asked the kasha, ein charisha b'Shabbos mal. What if they rule? What if the halacha is that Sanhedrin rules that there is no plowing on Shabbos? Right? There's no issur of plowing on Shabbos. You're allowed to plow on Shabbos. Ma, what's that? I mean, do we say kevon to come modu bechulu milsa? Do we say that? Well, since they're admitting that there's Shabbos, they're saying, of course, there's Shabbos, just that there isn't plowing. Kibito mitzvahs v'kiyu mitzvahs dami. So it's bittul mitzvahs. They're canceling plowing. They're saying plowing's mutter, but v'kiyu mitzvahs. But the rest of Hilchos Shabbos, they are saying, of course, are in place. Odilma came into akaryon le lecharisha kol ikr kakiras guf dami. Or do we say that since he's completely deleting charisha, plowing, so it's considered like getting rid of an entire thing? In which case, there would be no pilam davar shel. See, we touch my comment here. Yesh nida batorah, ava ba al shemeres yom kineged yom potter. Well, we learned in our Mishnah that if they rule that, of course, there's nida, just shomeres yom abal shomeres yom kineged yom is mutter. So we say that there is a pilam davar shel tzibor there, but va'amai ha'akaryon the shomeres yom kineged yom kol ikr. But aren't you completely deleting shomeres yom kineged yom? And yet we're saying that there is a pilam davar shel tzibor there. But Amalek Rav Yosef shomeres yom dika amin kiddushaninun. But we said, yeah, but by shomeres yom kineged yom, we said that it wasn't just deleting shomeres yom kineged yom. We're saying that it's mutter tabia. It said it was a specific thing. It's talking about ha'ara. We're talking about seeing dam during the day. But it's not talking about just saying that there's no shomeres yom kineged yom. Maybe there, Taka, there wouldn't be a pilam davar shel tzibur tashma. Yesh Shabbos b'Torah, aval amotzim mirishus hayochel l'shus harabim potter. Right? We said in our Mishnah that there is Shabbos, but amotzi mirishus hayochel l'shus harabim is potter. V'amai? Why would there be a pilam davar shel tzibur there? Ha'ikarin otzah kol ikar. You're deleting otzah. But also nami kiddushaninun. There also we said that it was where they said, well, there's only otzah, but not there's only hachnosa, but not. But they permitted hachnosa, but not otzah. Or they said moshid v'zorek. So again, it wasn't deleting the whole otzah merishus rishus. Tashma coming here. Yes, avodas kuchot bator. There is avodah zara. Aval mishtachave potter. Bound on his potter. V'amai. Oikarin mishtachavoy kolik. But you're deleting the mishtachavoy. Mishtachavoy nami kiddushanin. But over there, also by bowing down, we said, well, specifically bowing down when it comes to markulis kilu shalokadark. But we didn't have a scenario about if just deleting charisha, for example. So now Reb Zera asked an interesting question. But Reb Zera asked, in Shabbos b'Shvius mouth. You hear this question? Very interesting question. What if Bezdin rules that during the Shemitah year, there's no Shabbos? Wow. What an interesting concept. B'mai to, what exactly is what are they mistaking? What's the question here? Ba'dein krot, with regard to this pasuk, b'charish v'kotzer tishbos, from plowing and from harvesting rest. B'zman de'ika charisha ika Shabbos, b'zman de'leka charisha leka Shabbos. Maybe that there's only Shabbos when there's plowing, but during the Shemitah year, when nobody's plowing during Shemitah, there's no Shabbos either. It's Saturday. It's not Shabbos during the Shemitah year. Wow. So all kinds of Shabbos and Hilchos Shabbos, only 6 out of 7 years. Do we say Kevin the Mekaimin La Bishar Shnei Shavua? Do we say that when they rule, that if they rule that there's no Shabbos during the Shemitah year, do we say that, well, since they say that there still is Shabbos the other 6 years, Kibito miktas v'kiyu miktas dami, it's like they're only being mevatel part, but also maintaining the rest, right? They're saying we're not deleting Shabbos because there's Shabbos the other 6 years, just not this year. Or do we say that since they are deleting Shabbos during the Shemitah year, it's considered like they're mamish deleting Shabbos, and therefore there would be no pilam davar shel tzibur. Amar Ravina says, Ravina Tashma coming here. A prophet who prophesies to uproot something from the Torah. Chayav, so that Navi will be, I guess a Navi Sheker will be Chayav for that. Levito Mikzas, Lekiyo Mikzas, but if the Navi prophecies to only be Mevatel part of a mitzvah, Reb Shimon Omer Potter, Reb Shimon says Potter in that case. Nonetheless, when it comes to Avodah Zarah, Afilu Omer Hayom Ovda U'Lemacher Batla, even if he says today worship it and then tomorrow destroy the Avodah Zarah, which we're saying is a scenario of Bitul Mitzvahs V'Kiyum Mitzvahs. When it comes to Bitul Mitzvahs V'Kiyum Mitzvahs, Reb Shimon says Potter, but when it comes to Avodah Zarah, he'd be Chayiv. For example, even if he says worship the Avodah Zarah, even if the Navi says worship Avodah Zarah today and then tomorrow destroy it, that would be an example of Kiyum Mitzvahs U'Bitul Mitzvahs, and nonetheless, in that case, Chayiv Shmamina Ein Shabbos Bashvius Kibitul Mitzvahs V'Kiyum Mitzvahs Dami Shmamina. So we see that when Bezdin rules that there's no Shabbos during the Shemitah year, it's like Kiyum Mitzvahs U'Bitul Mitzvahs, meaning when a Navi Sheker says, do the Avodah Zarah today, destroy it tomorrow, that's similar to when basically Bezdin is saying, keep Shabbos 6 days of the week of the year, 6 years of the Shemitah cycle, don't have Shabbos on the 7th year. So that would be considered Bitul Mitzvahs, V'Kiyum Mitzvahs, just like when the prophet says, do the Avodah Zarah today, destroy it tomorrow. So if we're saying that don't keep Shabbos during Shemitah year is considered Kiyum Mitzvahs, so Bitul Mitzvahs, so then there would be Paril and Davar Shel Tzibur there. Now we get up to the next Mishnah of our Daf, and the next section of our Daf, the requirements for a proper Sanhedrin for Paril and Davar Shel Tzibur. It says in the Mishnah, Hodu Horu Bezdin, I keep on saying Hodu. It looks like Hodu, I guess. Horu Bezdin, V'yada Echad Men Sheto, a Bezdin ruled that, let's say, a type of Chelev is mutter, and there was somebody in the Bezdin that knew that they were mistaken, and he tells them, Teyinatem, you are mistaken. Or the biggest Talmud Chacham, the greatest posek of the Bezdin, was not there. Or somebody in the Bezdin, the Sanhedrin, was a proselyte, or mamzer, or nosin. Nosin were like the Givonim, the people who were the water schleppers. Or zakin shlo roi labanim, or somebody who's old and unable to have children. How is a potter? Well, then there's not going to be any Paril and Davar Shel Tzibur in that case. Shneimar Zbaz says, Shneimar Kan Eda, it says by Paril and Davar Shel Tzibur, it says Eda. V'neimar L'holan Eda, it says Eda by V'shaftu Eda, V'tzilu Eda by Sanhedrin, by Moshe Rabbeinu that he established. Ma'eda, I believe, or whatever, it says by V'shaftu Eda, V'tzilu Eda, by Ir Miklat, by Din Nefashos. Ma'eda Amur L'holan, just like that Eda, Kulan V'uyin L'ra, everybody is fit for Pasnin Halacha. Af Eda Amur Kan Achu Kulan V'uyin L'ra, so also by the Paril and Davar Shel Tzibur, the everybody needs to be fit to paskin, give halachic rulings, I guess. Says the Gemara, O Shelo Haya Mufla Shal Bezdin Sham. Okay, so we said in the Mishnah that if the greatest posek of the Bezdin was not there, Minolan, I don't know that some of Sheshes v'chein Tanit very bishmam and Pnisha Amru Horu b'davar shat stukin modinbo pturin. Well, they had said that if the if the Sanhedrin ruled about something that the tzdukim agree with, i.e. Torah shebichsav, so pturin, so there's no problem Davar Shel Tzibur, because they could have just looked it up and just read the Torah, and right, and therefore they're not going to be bringing a problem Davar Shel Tzibur there. So Lohoya Mufla Shel Bezdin Sham Nami. So also in a scenario where the greatest posek is not there, we say, wait, well, Why didn't you wait until he was there so you can ask a shaila to the greatest posek? P'turin, there's not going to be any problem. They should have just made sure to consult with the greatest posek, and they didn't do it. So there's not going to be a problem. There. Nemar Sham, Eda V'nemar Kan Eda, it says Eda by Dini Nefashos, and it says Eda here by Parlam Davar Shatzir, or Achu Kulam Ruin Ra, that everybody in the Sanhedrin has to be fit to give halachic rulings. But also, Minalan, and how do we know this? That by the pasuk, by V'shafto Eda V'tzilu Eda, how do we know that they were Roi Lo Ra? The Rav Chizda says, Rav Chizda Merkal Baz says V'siatzvu Sham Imach. It says by when Moshe Rabbeinu appointed the Sanhedrin, so it says V'tziatzvu Sham Imach, they will stand there with you. Imach b'domelach, similar, right? Imach, that they're similar to you, that they're Roi Lo Ra. Ve'ema Imach the Shechina. Maybe it's just a technical instruction that they should stand there with you, i.e., stand there with you and don't go in to where the Shechina is. Stand with you outside. Well, the Baz says also by the Sanhedrin, itach b'domelach, similar to you, that they are ra'ui lo. And now for the final segment of today's daf, the nature of Sanhedrin's inadvertent ruling, part 2. Says the Mishnah, Horu bezdin shogigin, also called shogin mevi'in par. This is really important. This is very important, friends. It's also going to be shaykh to the par Korina Mashiach in the next parak. That when is there a par of Davar Shel Tzibur? When Bezdin made a mistake, and they ruled, for example, that a certain type of chelev is mutter, and then Am Yisrael acted mistakenly, relied upon the psak of Bezdin, and acted based on that ruling. That is where there's a paralim davar shel tzibur. Mizidin vasu shogin, but if Sanhedrin somehow acted advertently, intentionally giving the wrong psak, and then Am Yisrael did based on that psak, Mivin kispa osiris, then there's no paralim davar shel tzibur, and just everybody would bring just regular korban chatasis. Kilu, if Bezdin intentionally ruled improperly about chelev, and then all the people relied upon that psak, well, there's no paralim davar shel tzibur there. They all inadvertently ate chelev, and they would all bring individual korban chatasis. Shogin v'asu mezidin harei p'turin. Now, if Bezdin inadvertently paskin that certain type of chelev is permitted, but then the people, Am Yisrael, intentionally ate the chelev, let's say, knowing that it was asur, well, in that case, there's no problem davar shel tzibur, and there's also no korban chatas, because since they acted intentionally eating chelev, so then there's not going to be a korban chatas either. It says the Gemara, shogin v'asu mezidin harei p'turin. So we said that in the scenario where Bezdin inadvertently made a mistake regarding chelev, but the people, I guess, knew that it was asur and ate it anyways. Harei b'turin. So we said in that case, there's no paralim davar shel tzibur. There's also no korban chatasis. Hashogeg dumya demezid chayev. But if it was shogeg during dumya demezid, but if an individual, let's say, acted in shogeg dumya demezid, kilu, not b'mezid, but shogeg dumya demezid, ve'echidami, what would that be? Shaharu bezdin shechelev mutter. For example, if bezdin ruled that chelev is mutter, v'nischalif lo b'shumun ve'achalo. So if bezdin ruled that a particular type of, and we had this the other day on that base already, that if bezdin ruled that a particular type of chelev is mutter, and then this guy thought he was eating shuman, but ended up eating that particular type of chelev. So we're saying in that case, he would be chayiv to bring a korban chatas lemitiv shorah the boy Ram Bar Chama. So that's the case. Ram Bar Chama Ataka asked this question on Daf Beis Amud Aleph. what happens in a scenario where Bezdin ruled that a particular type of chaylev is mutter? Now this person thought he was eating shuman, but ended up eating that chaylev. But he didn't eat it because he was relying on Bezdin. He thought he was eating shuman. What's the halacha there? Rabbi Bar Chama didn't know the answer. Let's say that the halacha is that he brings a korban chatas. Right? We just said he brings a korban chatas. Rabbi Bar Chama could say to you, Mishum de Tana Reisha Mezidin Vasu Shogegin Tana Seva Shogin Vasu Mezidin. Rabbi Bar Chama could answer, I'm not sure that we should be making that diuk in the Mishnah. He could answer that for consistency, because the Reisha said Mezidin Vasu Shogin. The Bezdin intentionally paskined incorrectly about the chaylev, and then the people relied on their psak and therefore ended up accidentally eating the chaylev. So because the first part talked about mezidin vasu shogin, tanaseva shogin vasu mezidin, but not for consistency, but not necessarily to make that diuk to say that if he thought he was eating shumah but ended up eating that particular chaylev, he would be chayav a korban. Remember, Chama could say, I'm not convinced that is the right diuk to make. Okay, this is good because my voice is finally starting to go with time. It's 9:30 at night already. Yeah, I think that was another long daf here. Masechet Horayos. The first few daf Masechet Horayos are long or hard. So also it's just there isn't really much tosfos here, so it's just big pages. So the first topic that we learned on Avdallah of Masechet Horayos is when an individual acts post-court rescinding. That Sanhedrin had given, let's say, said a particular type of chaylev is mutter, they rescinded it, and then some guy, nonetheless, didn't get the memo and ate that particular chaylev relying on Sanhedrin. So Reb Shimon says, potter, he doesn't have to bring a korban chatas. Reb Meir says he does have to bring a korban chatas. Reb Elazar says he has to bring an asham talui. Sumcha says that while it is a suffix of if he needs to bring a korban chatas or not, but he doesn't bring a asham tali. We talk about the nature of Sanhedrin's inadvertent ruling, part 1, and that there's a part of the Dover Tzibur when they permit only part of an avera, and it has to be a topic of Torah Shebal Peh, not Torah Shebichsam. We talked about the requirements for a proper Sanhedrin for Parlam Dover Tzibur. There was a whole list of them. For example, the greatest posik needs to be there, and they can't be a proselyte, a mamzer, nosen, etc. So we talked about those details. And then the nature of Sanhedrin's inadvertent ruling, part 2, which is that there has to be helim davar and shekigas ma'aseh. Now this is something that is going to be coming up in the coming days, that specifically when it comes to Parlam Dover Shel Tzibur and also Par Kohen Mashiach, it has to be helim davar that Sanhedrin, in the case of Parlam Dover Shel Tzibur, Sanhedrin made a mistake with regard to their ruling, and shekigas ma'aseh, that then, based on the mistaken ruling, the congregation then, let's say, ate this chaylev that's really forbidden, but Bezdin had said it was permitted. So Elen Dover and shekigas ma'aseh, that is where there will be a Parlam Dover Shel Tzibur. Chavre, that was the Avdalad of Masechet Horayos. I hope it was all right. Hope you enjoyed. Cheers.